I wasn't there to watch the most talked about wedding in the country. I was there to make sure the sound didn't fail. My name is Luna Bennett. I'm 28, and I spend most of my life hidden behind speakers, cables, and lights that nobody notices, unless something goes wrong. And that night, everything had to go right. It was the kind of event that didn't allow for mistakes. Millions watching. Massive sponsors. A live broadcast that couldn't glitch for even a second. And at the center of it all, Mia Rivera, the most influential pop star in the country. The woman who turned any song into a hit and any appearance into a headline. I'd worked big events before, but nothing on this scale. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a spectacle. And I hated spectacles. Not because they weren't impressive. They were. But because I knew what was behind them. I knew how much pretending it took to make everything look perfect. And that night, the perfection was about to fall apart.
Hi, Fra. I'm Lena, and I'll be your host for tonight's story. Before we jump back in, if that opening hooked you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And tell me in the comments to Fen, have you ever had to keep it together on the outside while everything was falling apart on the inside? I want to hear your stories. Okay, back to Luna.
I was standing stage right, headset pressed to my ear, listening to 3 people talking over each other on the comms channel. Mic check, monitor check. Lighting synced to the bride's entrance. Everything rehearsed down to the second. Vanessa walked in first. A flawless dress. Rehearsed posture. A smile that looked more practiced than felt. The crowd's reaction was immediate. Applause, phones raised, people crying like they were watching a fairy tale unfold live. I only checked the audio. Clean, stable, no glitches. That was all that mattered to me. But then, Mia appeared. And for 1 second, even I forgot what I was doing. She didn't walk in like someone living the happiest moment of her life. She walked in like someone holding on to something about to break. The dress was perfect, her hair flawless, every detail exactly in place. But her eyes weren't there. I'd seen that look before. On artists, minutes before walking on stage after a fight, a crisis, something no one was supposed to know about. Except this wasn't a concert. It was a wedding, and something was wrong. Very wrong. Luna, check her main mic again, someone said in my ear. I moved automatically, focusing on the job. It was easier that way. It always had been. Meanwhile, the ceremony began. Pretty words. Rehearsed vows. A perfect narrative being built live. And there I was, making sure everything sounded exactly the way it was supposed to sound. No noise, no interference, no truth. If you're already invested in this one, there's more waiting for you on my Patreon. Full-length stories you won't find here, longer chapters, extra scenes, and a lot more depth in every romance and every twist. You'll find the link just below this video. I didn't know it yet, but in less than 5 minutes. Everything on that stage was going to spiral completely out of control, and this time, it wouldn't be the sound that failed. It would be the entire script. The first thing that went off script wasn't visible to the audience. It was a whisper. Short. Fast. Cut off by tension. But in my headset, it was loud enough to change everything. Cut the screen. Now. I frowned. That wasn't in the plan. Nothing of that scale happened without warning. And still, the request came with urgency. Not technical, but emotional. I looked up at the stage automatically. Mia was standing still, motionless. The kind of stillness that doesn't come from calm, but from shock. Vanessa was still smiling, still holding the perfect image, still pretending everything was exactly as it should be. But Mia wasn't looking at her anymore. She was looking outward, like she'd just discovered something she couldn't ignore anymore. Luna, keep her mic open. Don't cut it for anything. I nodded, even knowing no one could see me. My hand was already on the board, main mic active, no extra compression, no interference. If she was about to speak, the whole country was going to hear exactly what she said. The officiant kept going. His voice sounded distant, almost disconnected from the scene. We are gathered here today to celebrate. But nobody was listening anymore. Not him, not the crowd, not Mia. That's when she took a deep breath, picked up the microphone, and for the first time that night, did something that wasn't rehearsed. I can't do this. Silence. Not the pretty ceremony kind of silence. A heavy silence. Confused. Alive. The kind of silence that settles in when nobody knows what's happening. But everyone can feel that something huge just broke. Vanessa turned her head slowly. The smile was still there. But now, more rigid. "Babe," she tried. Mia didn't answer. She looked straight ahead, at the crowd, at the millions watching, and said, with a calm that didn't match the moment, "I just found out that the person I was about to marry isn't who I thought she was." The murmuring started, low at first, then rising, like a wave that hadn't crashed yet. But you could already hear it coming. Vanessa took a step toward her. "This isn't the place for this." Mia stepped back, a small gesture, but final. "Isn't the place, or isn't the moment you can control," she answered. This wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a live unraveling. I felt my hand tighten on the audio board. Not from nerves, from instinct. This was about to explode. "Cut the broadcast?" someone asked in my ear. "No," another voice answered right away. "Not now." "Of course not. That was ratings, and ratings never get cut." Vanessa tried to hold her composure, but her face no longer carried the same certainty. "Why are you doing this? Here? Now?" Mia laughed. No humor in it. "Because you chose to do this first." The crowd wasn't an audience anymore. It was a witness. Phones raised, people whispering, others filming with their own hands shaking. And I, still there, doing my job, keeping everything clean, clear, audible, even when it shouldn't be. Mia went quiet for a few seconds, not looking at Vanessa, not looking at the officiant, but also not looking at me, until she did, straight at me, without hesitating. It took me a second to realize it was me she was looking at. I was in black, wearing a headset, a face completely out of place in that scene. But in that moment, I was the only person there who wasn't performing, and she saw that. I saw when she decided. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't impulsive in a chaotic way. It was precise. Like, for the first time that night, she was choosing something real. She raised the microphone again and said, "If the love I thought I had was a lie." A pause, controlled breathing, a steady gaze. "Then I'd rather start from zero." The silence came back, heavier this time, more alert. She took a step forward and pointed at me. My body didn't react, but my mind froze. "Hey." Her voice wasn't a stage voice anymore. It was direct, raw. "Sound girl." Some people laughed, others held their breath. I did neither. "Marry me." The world didn't stop. But everything else seemed to lose importance. The sound of the crowd disappeared. The voices in my headset vanished. Even the weight of the equipment on my body felt distant. Only that was left, her, and the question. None of it made sense. Nothing about it made sense. But at the same time, I knew exactly what was happening. It wasn't about me. It never was. It was about her trying not to fall apart. And still, she chose someone real. And for some reason I still didn't understand. that someone was me. I could have ignored it. I could have looked down. I could have let it die right there. But I didn't. I took off the headset. Slowly. Took a step forward. And felt hundreds of eyes cut through me on the way. I walked up onto the stage, not knowing what would come next, not knowing why, not knowing anything. I stopped in front of her. Up close. She looked different. Less unreachable. More human, but still intense enough to make any decision feel small. She didn't smile. She didn't try to convince me. She just waited. And I realized that for the first time that night, she wasn't performing. I took a deep breath and answered, "Okay." It wasn't romantic. It wasn't elaborate, but it was true. And in that moment, it was all she needed. The crowd exploded. Screams, shock, disbelief. Someone laughed too loud. Another started clapping without understanding why. And the broadcast kept going. Live, no cuts, no script, completely out of control. I didn't know what I'd just done, but I knew one thing. My life, the way it had been until then, had ended in that exact second. The sound of the crowd was still echoing when someone grabbed my arm. Hard, direct, professional. "You need to get off the stage, now." But I didn't leave. Not right away. Because Mia was still standing in front of me, and as absurd as all of it was, she hadn't let go of my hand. I didn't even remember when it happened. But it was there. Warm, steady, too real to be just part of a spectacle. "She stays." Mia's voice cut through the movement around me. No shouting, no hesitation, just deciding. The person pulling me stopped, looked at her, then at me, and let go. Like that was enough. And maybe it was. Because in that moment, everything revolved around her. Vanessa wasn't the center anymore. In fact, she wasn't even there anymore. I saw them take her off the stage, fast, discreet, like they were erasing a technical error. But it wasn't technical. It was personal, and it was too big to erase. "Are you sure about this?" That was the first thing Mia asked me. Right there, in the middle of the chaos. Like it was a normal conversation. I could have said no. Maybe I should have. But looking at her, I realized that question wasn't about the wedding. It was about whether I was going to back out. And in that moment, I didn't. "No," I answered. She nodded. Barely noticeable, but enough. "Good," she said, turning back to the officiant, who seemed unsure whether to continue or disappear. "Let's finish this." And just like that, simply like that, the ceremony went on. No background music, no script, no preparation of any kind, just words being said because they needed to be said. I didn't hear half of them. Not because I didn't want to, but because my head was still trying to catch up with what was happening. Me, on stage, marrying the most famous woman in the country, without even knowing her full last name until a few hours earlier. "Do you take..." The question came, direct. No poetry, no build-up. Mia answered first. "I do." No pause, no doubt. Not looking at me, like it was the only thing she was sure of that night. And then, it was my turn. I felt the weight of the moment. Not the weight of the ceremony, but the weight of the choice. Because unlike her, I could still walk away. There was still time. It was still reversible. But I didn't leave. "I do," I said, and in that second, something changed. Not in the room, not in the crowd, but inside me. Like a door had closed without me noticing, and it couldn't be opened again. The efficient finished quickly. Too quickly. Like someone who just wanted to get out of there with some dignity. Applause came, messy, confused, but it came. And, officially, I was married to Mia Rivera, the woman who had chosen me on an impulse, and who now held my hand like it wasn't a mistake. Flash, flash, flash. The lights started. Photographers, cameras, people invading a space that seconds earlier had been controlled. And, for the first time since it all began, I felt it. Not emotion, not happiness, but reality. This was big. Too big. Mia, over here. Mia, was this planned? Who is she? Did you two already know each other? Questions started coming from every direction. None of them aimed at me, but all of them. About me. And I had no answer for any of them. Not even for myself. Enough. Mia said it quietly. But it was enough. Security moved, made space, blocked access, and within seconds we were pulled out of there. Not through the front, but through the back. Narrow hallways, cold lights, people walking too fast, talking too loud, and me being pulled along, without understanding where or why, until a door closed. Hard. Silence. Real silence this time. I let out a breath. I didn't even know I'd been holding it. Mia let go of my hand, and that felt strange, more than it should have. She ran a hand over her face, wiping off some of the makeup, or maybe trying to wipe away the moment. I stood there, still, not sure whether to speak, to ask, or just wait. She was the one who broke the silence. You want to make a run for it now? The tone wasn't judgmental. It was almost honest, like she was really prepared for that. I thought about it for a second. Maybe two. But I didn't need more. No, I answered. She looked at me. Really looked this time. No stage, no camera, no audience, just looked. And something shifted there, small, but noticeable. Good, she said, taking a deep breath, because this wasn't just a moment. She stepped closer, not invasive, but enough. This is a problem now. I almost laughed. Almost. I figured, I answered. She tilted her head slightly, like she was weighing something. Not about me, but about the situation. And then she said, they'll say it's marketing. Pause. Or a breakdown. Another pause. Or a scam. I shrugged. Sounds about right. She let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Almost. Then let's give them a better answer. That's when I realized that this hadn't ended yet. In fact, it had just started. You're staying. It wasn't a question. Staying where? With me. Direct. No detour, no softening it. For how long? She hesitated. For the first time. Long enough for this to look real. I crossed my arms. Not defensively, but to think. And after, she looked at me. And for a second, she had no ready answer. After. We'll see. That wasn't a plan. It was an improvised agreement, built on top of chaos, exposure, and necessity. And still, I considered it, because deep down, I knew. That walking away wouldn't give me back the life I had before. That was already gone. So the only question left was, how far was I willing to go with this? I looked at her. Really looked. Without the image, without the fame, without the name, just the woman, tired, exposed, and for the first time, sincere. Okay, I said. Again, simple, direct, irreversible, and, in that moment, I accepted a lot more than a marriage. I accepted stepping into her world, without knowing how to get out afterward. I thought leaving that green room would mean going back to my life. I was wrong. The door opened, and the world outside wasn't the same anymore. Not for her, not for me. There was no more backstage. There was no more anonymity. There was a hallway full of people trying to understand what had just happened, and how to turn it into some kind of acceptable story. We need an official version. This needs to be controlled. She can't talk right now. Who is this girl? That last question was asked while looking straight at me. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Mia answered for me. She's my wife. Silence. Not the dramatic silence from the stage, but that professional silence, where everyone recalculates too fast. Okay, someone said. Then we work with that. Work with that. Like it was a campaign, a strategy, a product. I felt it. But I didn't say anything, because deep down, I knew that was just how it worked. Mia pulled me gently by the arm. Not forcefully, but with intention. Come on. And I went. We passed through doors, hallways, private elevators. Everything fast, everything organized, everything far from the public. Until we reached a car, black, tinted windows, engine running, waiting. The door opened. She got in first. I got in after. The door closed. And for the first time since the stage, the world outside felt distant, truly, silent, controlled. The car started moving, and nobody said anything. Not me, not her. The kind of silence that isn't uncomfortable, but isn't comfortable either. Just necessary. I looked out the window, lights passing. A normal city. People living lives that hadn't been turned upside down in the last 30 minutes. It was strange, because mine had, and I still hadn't caught up to it. Where do you live? She asked, not looking at me. Silver Lake. Do you live with anyone? No. She nodded, like she was mentally noting something. You're not going back there tonight. It wasn't a question. It was a decision. I turned to face her. Is that part of the deal? She finally looked at me, and, for the first time since it all started, she seemed unsure. It's part of not letting this fall apart before it even starts. I leaned my head back against the seat, let out a breath. And what exactly is this? She took a few seconds to answer, and that already said a lot. Aversion. That needs to work. Honest. More than I expected. More than any pretty speech. I nodded slowly. And you know how to make that work? She gave a half smile. No humor in it. I know how to fake it well. That wasn't news, but hearing her say it was different. And when you stop faking it? I asked. She looked at me. And this time, she didn't look away. You'll know. It wasn't a comfortable answer, but it was real. And strangely, that started to matter more than it should have. The car stopped. Automatic gate. Security. A house too big to feel like a home. Too small to feel like a magazine cover mansion. Perfect balance. Deliberate. Like everything in her life. The door opened. She got out. I hesitated a second. But I got out too. The night air hit differently there. Quieter. More isolated. More hers. We went inside, and the silence came back. But not the same one. This was another kind, more intimate, more dangerous. Because now, no one was watching. She took off her heels, left them wherever, let her hair down, and, within seconds, she looked like a different person, not less beautiful, but less constructed, more possible. I stood near the door, not sure whether to move forward, to wait, to ask. She looked at me, and this time, there was no audience. You can leave tomorrow, she said. Calm. No pressure. If you want. I leaned against the wall, crossed my arms. And you? She shrugged. I'll still be here. It wasn't about the place. It was about her life. And for the first time, I understood the size of it. It wasn't just fame. It was an entire structure, a built reality. And I had stepped into it, with zero preparation. And tonight? I asked. She took a deep breath, looked around, like she was trying to find something in there. Maybe control, maybe an answer, maybe a balance point. Tonight, we rest. Simple, almost ordinary, but coming from her. It felt much harder than it sounded. I nodded, slowly, and took a few steps inside. Not like a guest, but not like someone who belonged there either. Not yet. But something had changed. Small, subtle, but enough not to be ignored. Because for the first time since the stage, it didn't feel like just an impulsive mistake anymore. It felt like the beginning of something. And that's exactly what made it more dangerous. I woke up before her, not out of habit, but because the silence in that place was different from any I'd experienced before. No street noise, no neighbors, nothing. Just quiet. I lay there for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember where I was. And when I remembered, the weight came. Not like panic, but like reality. I was in Mia Rivera's house, married to her, after a proposal made in the middle of a live meltdown. And it still felt less absurd than it should have. I sat up slowly. The room was big, almost too tidy, but not impersonal. There were signs of someone who actually lived there. An open book, a jacket thrown over a chair, a half-empty glass of water. Small imperfections that didn't match her public image. And for some reason, that made everything feel more real. I got up, opened the door, and went downstairs. The house was still quiet, but not empty. She was in the kitchen, back turned, barefoot, making coffee. No makeup, no stage, no one watching. And that was the first time I saw the real Mia. She turned when she heard me. She didn't seem surprised. "You're an early riser," she said, casual, like it was normal, like I wasn't a stranger who'd agreed to marry her hours before. "Habit," I answered. She nodded, turned back around. "Coffee?" "Yes." I stepped closer. No rush. Not intruding. Just occupying the same space. She poured the coffee into a cup, handed it to me, and for a second, our fingers touched. Nothing much, but not nothing either. "What's your full name?" she asked. I almost smiled. "Luna Bennett." She repeated it softly, like she was filing it away. "Luna." This time, with intention. I leaned against the counter, watching her, noticing details no one else ever showed. The way she held her cup, how she breathed deeper than she needed to, how she seemed tired. "Did you sleep?" I asked. She gave a half smile. "A little. Honest, without effort." "And you?" she asked. "Same. A lie, but not important enough to correct. Silence, but not empty. It was the kind of silence that starts filling space, instead of pushing it away. "They'll be here soon," she said. I nodded. I figured. She turned to face me, leaning on the counter now, closer. "You can still leave," she said, direct. "No drama." "I know." And I took a deep breath, not to answer, but to understand what I was feeling. Because it wasn't just curiosity. It wasn't just confusion. It was something harder to name. "I don't want to leave right now," I answered. She held my gaze, longer than before. No rush, no defense. And that changed something. Small, but irreversible. "Then stay," she said. Not as an order, not as a request, just as a fact. Another silence, but now. Closer, denser, more, charged. She took a step, barely anything, but enough. I didn't back away, didn't move closer either, just stayed. And, for the first time, there was no more excuse. It wasn't the chaos, it wasn't the deal, it wasn't the situation. It was just us. And that was more dangerous than anything that had happened so far. "This doesn't make sense," she said quietly. I gave a half smile. "Makes even less if we overthink it." She let out a light breath, almost a laugh. But she didn't look away. Neither did I. The distance between us got too small to ignore, but still big enough to be a choice. And that's when I realized that I could leave. I could break this before it started. I could go back to a version of my life that still made sense. But I didn't. I stayed. She glanced at my mouth. Quick, but not quick enough to go unnoticed. I noticed, and I didn't look away, because in that moment, I wanted to see how far it would go. She hesitated. A second, maybe two. And that was the most honest thing about it, because Mia Rivera didn't hesitate in public. But there. She hesitated, and chose anyway. When she leaned in, it wasn't dramatic. There was no rehearsed gesture, no exaggerated intensity. It was simple, direct, and still. Impossible to ignore. The kiss didn't come like an explosion. It came like a confirmation. Like it had already been there, just waiting to happen. Warm, calm, unhurried. No need to prove anything. Just happening. I didn't think. Not in that moment. I just felt it. And that was enough when she pulled back. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. But the silence now was different. It wasn't doubt anymore. It wasn't distance anymore. It was a beginning. And for the first time since it all began, it didn't feel like a mistake anymore. It felt like a choice. The knock on the door came a few minutes later. Firm, precise. Like the outside world had waited the exact right amount of time before coming back to intrude. We pulled apart almost at the same time. Not out of embarrassment, but out of instinct. Like that still wasn't something that could exist outside of that space. "They're here," Mia said. Her voice wasn't the same as before. Not cold, but more controlled. I nodded, still feeling the echo of what had just happened. Not like something too intense, but like something that couldn't be ignored. The door opened, and reality came back. Publicist, lawyer, people with invisible clipboards in their heads, organizing everything before they even sat down. But, this time, something had changed. Not in the situation, but in how I stood in it. I wasn't there anymore as someone who could leave at any moment. I had chosen to stay, and that changed everything. "We need to align the narrative for today's interview," said the woman in the blazer, already opening her tablet. "No open-ended questions," the other one added. "No unnecessary exposure," the third one finished. I sat down, more comfortable than before. Not comfortable, but present. "And what can we say?" I asked. They looked at me. Differently this time. Less calculation. More consideration. "You can talk about how this started," the woman said, "but not in a chaotic way." I tilted my head. But it was chaotic. She held my gaze. "Then we organize it." I almost smiled. Almost. Sure. Mia was quiet, watching, but not distant. She was listening, really listening. "And what about the relationship?" I asked. The man with the folder answered, "You're getting to know each other." Simple, Safe, controllable. I shook my head slowly. But we already know each other. They didn't get it, but Mia did. I saw when she got it. She didn't correct it. Didn't explain, just let it be. And that said a lot more. Then we keep it simple, the woman continued. Respect, connection, a conscious choice. A conscious choice. I held on to that phrase, because for the first time, it didn't feel completely wrong. The meeting ended fast, always fast, decisions made, script set, exits planned, and again. The house went quiet, but not the same silence as before. This one carried something else. I got up, went to the window, looked outside. The city was still there, running, indifferent, like nothing had happened. You don't have to adjust what you said because of them, Mia said behind me. I didn't turn around. I know. But you will anyway. Now I turned. Looked at her. So do you. She held my gaze. No defense. I do. Honest. But not everything. That made me think, more than any strategy. And what don't you adjust? I asked. She took her time. Not from lack of an answer, but from choosing which one to give. This. Simple. Direct. No need to explain. I understood, and for some reason, that mattered, more than it should have, more than was safe. Then don't adjust this, I said. She took a step toward me. No rush, no hidden agenda, just getting closer. I won't. The space between us shrank again, but different this time. It wasn't new anymore. It wasn't doubt anymore. It was continuity. She rested her hand lightly on my arm. Nothing invasive, but firm enough not to be accidental. This is going to get harder, she said. I gave a half smile. I know. Not just out there. She was warning me. Not about the media, but about us. I took a deep breath. Do you want to stop? A direct question. No defense. No anticipating the answer. She looked at me. Longer, deeper, and this time, there was no hesitation. No. Simple, irreversible. I nodded, and in that moment, the choice stopped being just hers, or just mine. It became ours. No contract, no promise, but real enough not to be ignored. Her phone buzzed. Notification after notification, the world coming back to collect. But she didn't look. Not right away. And that was the most meaningful thing that had happened so far. Because for the first time, Mia Rivera wasn't reacting to the world. She was choosing to ignore it, at least for a few seconds. And those seconds were ours. Short, silent, but enough to change the direction of everything that came after. Because now, it wasn't just about maintaining a story anymore. It was about dealing with what it was becoming. The first time we went out together wasn't planned. Of course there was a plan. There always was. A set time. A discreet entrance. A calculated exit. An alternate route in case anything went sideways. But even with all that, none of it felt natural. The car stopped in front of a restaurant I wouldn't have known how to name. Not because it was obscure, but because it wasn't part of my world. Nothing there was. Just follow my lead, Mia said, before opening the door. I nodded. Not because I knew her rhythm, but because I knew how to observe. I always had. We got out, and it was instant. Stares, whispers, phones being raised too discreetly to be a coincidence. The door opened before we even got there. Staff already prepared, table reserved, environment controlled, but still, not invisible. We walked in, and I felt it. Not the pressure, but the difference. I didn't belong there. Not yet. Maybe never. But for the first time, that didn't make me want to leave. We sat down, side by side, not facing each other. Her choice. And it made sense. Less confrontation, more alignment. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "I'm observing," I answered. She gave a half smile. "That helps." The waiter came too fast, too polite, too trained. He spoke to her, looked at me, but didn't ask my name. Of course not. I ordered something. I don't even remember what. And for a few minutes, that was it. Silence. People watching. Silverware. Measured breaths. Until someone approached the table. Uninvited. Unasked. A man. Too sure of himself. Too confident. Too wrong. "So it's you," he said, looking straight at me. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. "Interesting," he went on. Not what I expected. Mia didn't raise her voice, but she changed the atmosphere. "You weren't invited." Simple. Direct. He ignored it. Of course. "Do you really think this is going to last?" he asked, smiling now. But it wasn't a good smile. I looked at him. Calmly. No rush. And answered, "Do you think that's any of your business?" His smile faltered. For a second. Just one. But enough. Mia leaned her arm on the table, slightly closer to me, not theatrical, but visible. "Now answer this," she added. "Why are you still here?" He let out a breath through his nose. No comeback. No win. "Good luck with that," he said, before walking away. I watched him leave until he was gone, and only then did I notice. My hand was clenched, tense. I relaxed it, slowly. Mia didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then she said, "You didn't have to answer him." I shrugged. But I did. She looked at me. And this time, there was something different there. Not curiosity, not analysis, but admiration. Small, but real. "You don't back down easily," she said. "Neither do you." She let out a small smile. And that changed everything. Because it wasn't the stage smile. It wasn't the camera smile. It was hers. Really hers. Dinner went on, but different, lighter, closer, more, ours. No effort, no strategy, just happening. And little by little, the room stopped mattering. The people, the stairs, everything faded, like for the first time since the stage. The world had shrunk. And we hadn't. When we left, it was already night. Darker, more discreet, but still. Watched. We got into the car. Door closed. Silence, but not empty. I leaned my head back against the seat, let out a breath. This is never going to be normal, is it? She thought about it for a few seconds. Not in the usual way. I turned my face, looked at her. "And our way?" She held my gaze and answered, "We'll figure it out." Simple, but enough. The car started moving. And this time, I didn't look out the window. I stayed, right there, in the space between us, which wasn't the same anymore. She rested her arm on the seat, closer, not touching, but present, and that was stronger than any bigger gesture. "You can still leave," she said. Again, but different. Not as an option, as care. I didn't think, not for a second. "I know." Pause. "But I don't want to." She didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. And little by little, the distance stopped existing, not because we decided to, but because it didn't make sense to keep it anymore. She leaned in first, this time without hesitating. No pause, no doubt. And I didn't back away, because now, it wasn't impulse anymore. It was a choice. The kiss came different from the first one. Steadier, more present, more deliberate. No rush. But no room for doubt either. And when it happened, there was no surprise, just continuity. When we pulled apart, neither of us said anything, but we didn't need to, because, for the first time, there was no going back to before, and maybe no wanting to either. The following days didn't slow down. They organized themselves. Interviews, appearances, calculated photos, spontaneous moments that were never entirely spontaneous. But in the middle of all that, something slipped through, and it wasn't planned, and it wasn't controlled, and definitely, it wasn't a lie. I started to understand her rhythm, not the stage rhythm, the real one, the moments when she needed silence, the moments when she got more distant, and especially the moments when she stopped performing. And those were the only ones that mattered. We never talked directly about what was happening between us. Not in so many words, not with a label, but we didn't avoid it either. It was like things were happening in parallel. The public narrative and the truth, and, little by little, they started to blend. Vanessa tried to come back, not in person, but through the media, indirect interviews, insinuations, attempts to turn everything into a scandal. But it didn't work, because unlike what she expected, we didn't react, we didn't fight, we didn't play the game, and that took the power out of it. "She'll give up," Mia said one night. We were in the living room, no harsh light, no camera, just there. "Why?" I asked. "Because she needs a reaction." I nodded, made sense. "And we don't give her one." She looked at me, longer, deeper. "You don't give her one." That stayed with me, more than it should have. "Neither do you," I answered. She gave a half smile, but didn't answer. And for the first time, it didn't feel necessary. Time passed. No big events, no explosions, no breakups. And that was strange, because after everything, I expected something more chaotic, but it didn't come. Something harder came instead. Quieter, more real. One morning, I woke up and she wasn't there. Not in the bedroom, not in the kitchen, not anywhere in the house. The car wasn't in the garage, and for the first time, I felt it. Not fear, but absence. I sat on the couch, waited, not knowing why, not knowing exactly what I was waiting for. But I stayed, minutes, maybe more, until I heard the gate, the sound of the car, footsteps, the door opening. She walked in. No entourage, no rush, nothing in her hands, just her. I stood up, without realizing it. "You disappeared," I said. She stopped, looked at me, and for a second, she seemed surprised. "I went to take care of something. Simple, but not enough." Without saying anything, she took a deep breath, and for the first time, she had no ready answer. I didn't think. Honest, but incomplete. I nodded, slowly, not in agreement, but in understanding. "It's fine," I said. But it wasn't. She noticed. Of course she noticed. She took a step toward me. It wasn't anything. I held her gaze. I know. Silence. But different, more tense, more true. "But I missed you." That came out with no preparation, no filter, no defense, and, once it was out, there was no taking it back. She stood still, looking at me, not looking away, not speaking. And this time, no control. I saw it. I felt it. She stepped closer, slowly, without breaking eye contact, and stopped in front of me. Close, again, but different from every other time. "I didn't know this was going to happen," she said, quietly. Neither did I. Silence, but full, heavy, real. "And now?" I asked. She took her time, but not out of doubt, out of choice. Now. We stopped pretending. Simple, but final. I let out a breath, like I'd been waiting for that, even without knowing it. And everything else? She gave a half smile. Lighter. More. Free. We'll figure it out. And this time, it didn't feel like improvising. It felt like a decision. She rested her forehead against mine, lightly, unhurried, and I didn't pull away, because now, there was no reason to. There was no more script, no more roles, just us. And for the first time since that stage, it didn't feel like a mistake, or an arrangement, or an accident. It felt exactly like what it was, a choice, that started in chaos, and turned into something neither of us had planned, but that, still, was worth continuing. Some things never went back to normal, and that was the best part. The house stayed the same. The coffee was still too strong when she made it, and I still woke up early, even when I didn't need to. But nothing there was like before. Not me. Not her. Not the silence. The media got tired. Not of us, but of the lack of scandal. No fight. No dramatic ending. No easy story to sell. And little by little, the noise died down. It didn't disappear. It never does. But it stopped being the center. And that made room. For us. The routine wasn't built. It just happened. No rules. No formal agreement. No need to define what it was. Because somehow, we already knew. There were hard days. Of course. Moments when her world felt too big for me. Moments when I felt too simple for that world. But we didn't run. Not from her. Not from me. Not from this. And that. Was what made it work. One night, months later, we were sitting on the living room floor. No harsh light. No music. Nothing. Just there. Her leaning against the couch. Me leaning against her. Simple. Almost ordinary. Would you still have said yes? She asked. Just like that. Out of nowhere. I thought about it. Not quickly. Not automatically. But calmly. Not the same way, I answered. She turned her face. Curious. How then? I gave a small smile. Small, but real. With more certainty. She stayed quiet, but didn't look away. And this time, there was no doubt, no hesitation, no fear of getting it wrong, because it wasn't about that moment anymore, or the stage, or the impulse. It was about what came after, and what stayed. She leaned in. No rush, no need to make it bigger than it was. And I didn't pull away, because it never made sense to pull away again. Well, she said quietly, almost too close. Then there's still time to do it right. I let out a light breath. Now? She nodded. Simple, as always. No audience, no camera, no one watching. Just us. And for the first time, that was more than enough. I didn't say yes again, not in words. But I stayed. And this time, knowing exactly what that meant.